You know, in religion, which we'll talk about more on Sunday, we meet in the ashram. Tattvam asi. Thou art that. I. Subjectivity. Where do we meet the second experience? Relationally. We might meet it in psychotherapy. Or we might meet it in church. Right? In religion, we'll talk about it on Sundays.
You would hope you'd meet it with your partners and your spouse. And
yeah, one would hope. One would hope. In relationship. Right? In relationship. In relationship. Right? In all forms of subjectivity. Whether it's relationship to God, it's devotional. Right? If it's relationship, you know, kind of to partner, as Dee says, right? And that's devotion, that's church. Where would we meet the third? The third we would meet in, Dan talked about viewing objectively what's going on. We meet in all dharma, right? All systems of thought, whether it's psychology, science, right? Look at it again. That would be Buddha, Sangha, and Dharma. Buddha would be I, right? Sangha would be relationship, right? Dharma would be the Tao, the Torah, the theory, the idea, right? The map, right? Now watch something kind of infinitely gorgeously cool. I mean, it's just gorgeous, right? It's just so cool, and it's just so wonderful, just so illuminating. And then as we go into this, as Diane incarnates it, actually becomes real in a different way. And that is that the whole world is arguing, saying, my perspective is better than yours, right? That's what everybody's saying. My perspective is better than yours. But not only my Jewish perspective is better than your Buddhist perspective, which is better than your Mormon perspective, which is better than your Irish perspective if you're Catholic, or yours if you're Protestant, and besides all that, but there's these three core perspectives. Go to an ashram and ask people, what do you think about the church? Oh my God, the church. Right? Complete, right? Devastation. So someone might have been at church at a certain point in their life, they reject the church, and they move into first-person activity. We'll call it ashram activity. Go to the church, ask them what they think about the ashram. That'll get you far. Right? Are we in the cult house here? Right? Hello? Right? Hello? Let's go. Right? Oh my God. Right? But that's exactly right, because that's a second person looking at people doing first-person experience. And first person is a little too dangerous because it's not monitored.
It's naturally untrustworthy.
Naturally untrustworthy, thank you. Because it's not guarded by the apostles, right? By the guardians of the dogma. Right?
Well, and there is a true concern if you're in charge of your own spirituality. It can be appropriated by the ego.
Yeah.
And so there is an actual danger there, and that's why the second person perspective or the structure really wants you to participate in the structure, because you're actually not trustable. Does it make sense what we're talking about? Yeah.
Pretty cool. And then the third would be the academy, the university. Right? When I was at Oxford, so I was teaching a graduate course in Oxford in Hebrew mysticism, and I would start with chanting. They almost threw me out of the building. How could you possibly be chanting in Oxford? Right? You know, outside the Bodleian Library in Oxford, you've got a picture of kind of the great repositories of knowledge. It's 5 men, busts of them from the neck up. That is Oxford. Okay? That's the Bodleian Library. Right? And these are the holders, right, of the great third-person tradition. So the academy rejects the ashram and the church. The church, that's actually stunning. The church rejects the ashram and the academy. Right? The ashram rejects the church and the academy. So it's each one of these perspectives. What we just offered was a new way, right, to organize reality. And I remember when I sent this to Ken, this particular thing, he was very excited about it, because it actually shows you how this actually plays in the world. And as Diane pointed out, right, each one has a shadow. Right? And the critique of each one of the others actually legitimate. Right? Each one is, you know, the I, right? The I, I'm just repeating now, reflecting back what Diane said, right? The I is basically a dangerous place. You know, reified narcissism, right? In the form of New Age spirituality. Ever heard of that? Of course we have. Right? You know, I, right? And then a little more I.
And you get self-absorbed and you don't make contributions to the culture, and you forget that you're a civil servant and you're a citizen and you're just into your own bliss.
Right. And that's, you know, follow your bliss, right, into your own reified narcissism. Right? But that's actually a real shadow, right, of the I. It's a real thing. You know, shadow of, you know, level 2 of the church or the synagogue. Well, just walking to the Vatican any day. You know, I've done it a couple times, right? You know, in other words, the kind of reification of, you know, religious, institutional ultimately becomes corruption in all sorts of ways, right? And the biggest shadow is, right, if you're not with us, you're not redeemed, right? Because that's what the institution tends to do. We have the dogma. We mediate to you the voice of God. You're unable to hear the voice of God by yourself. That's the greatest danger, right? So that's, the shadow, of course, of science, or of all great theories, is they're desiccated, like Giacometti's, sculptures, kind of desiccated kind of figures of theory, which just aren't animated with warmth and with love and with embrace, with everything that makes kind of the world kind of, worth living in. And with experience. So that gives you a sense. This was just to kind of plug in a little, kind of plug in one level more into these three perspectives. And now we're just going to take the perspectives following Diane and just try and incarnate the perspectives, because otherwise they remain non-integral. Meaning if we would just map it, but not actually do it and incarnate it.
Do you have an experience?
So what we would be doing is, right, we would have kind of provided, sorry about this, right, we would have provided, right, a great theory, right, we would provide a great theory, which is the lower right part. There's all these nice, beautiful theories, which is call that the lower right, but we wouldn't actually incarnate it and experience it. So what we're about to do is we're about to take this kind of little map that we just did, right, mapping, and we're going to take it into we're going to try and experience and actually experience these three perspectives, and all through our kind of play together, we're going to play and move in and out, right, of these three perspectives, right? Looking at it through the I, through the we, through the it. Again, in my tradition we would call that God, Torah, and Israel. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. The good, the true, the beautiful. The I, the we, the it. Actually, that's what we mean by philosophy of perennius. These three appear every place. It's just part of the
Holy Trinity.
The Holy Trinity, right? This is what we mean by source code. See now what I mean by source code? This is source code. And if this isn't on the surface of the computer, it's source code. Once you see it, you can begin to move into play. And so now let's just try and kind of step in deeper and kind of make it happen.
And I just also want to say one other thing. We gave kind of these larger examples, but just smaller examples, that when you speak from your own first-person experience, there's a kind of authority to it, because nobody can really argue with what's true for you, right? You like something, you don't like something, it's just very straightforward. But if you were to go into court, for instance, my husband's the former Chief Justice in Utah, right? And we always have this difference. I tend to speak from first-person I, and he speaks in third person. He speaks about it all the time, because imagine as a lawyer if I went into court and spoke from the first person and told the judge, I really think that you should think my way. This is my view, right? Not at all. You have to speak in third person. These are the facts. This is what happens. This is the law, and this is how you should think about it. There's a little second person moment where you tell the judge how they should think, but it's all based in the third person. So we're just trying to become aware of, on a large level how this works, but also just on a daily basis. You do a lot better when you make a request of your spouse. I would really like for you to be home at 5, rather than saying you need to be home at 5. That's a second person. You need to do this, and you'll notice it doesn't work quite as well, right? Or it's against the rules if you're not home at 5. That's a third person. And they set up, even in our language, they set up all kinds of subtleties that can either help us or actually get in our way. And we're not always aware of that. So we really want to kind of just heighten our relationship to these 3 points of view.
It's funny because I spend a large part of my weeks on the phone with families trying to explain that. It's going to be more effective if you speak from I. When you did this, I felt hurt. Then,
beautiful.
You're destructive.
Yeah, exactly. You're destructive, or it is wrong, which is very weak, because what happens, this is what's the important point about speaking in third person, is the minute you say something in third, it is true that, you set up an argument, because somebody can say the opposite, right? The minute you speak about the third person, you create a possibility for someone to argue with you. But as long as you're speaking as I, there's no problem. And this will all become much more clear as we go along. So, I know, what does this have to do with love? That's a great question. I'm not sure yet. I'm sure it'll become clear. All right, so let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So we have 5 groups of 3 and 1 extra person. So if you would just cluster yourselves into groups of 3 in terms of however it's easy where you're sitting, and then if whoever's left out, you 3 can be together.
Yeah, you can go to the back room there.
You guys want to pop up that back room?
Absolutely.
I think so.